Good afternoon to you. Mark Stott of HurricaneTrack.com here. Time for your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion video. The weekly look at what's going on in the tropics, a few weather odds and ends, and of course a look at lower 48 weather. It's December the 28th, 2020, and that means that unless the clock starts ticking backwards on New Year's Eve at 11:59 and 59 seconds, which at this point, nothing would surprise me if it does that. Par for the course, right? But it is almost 2021, so this will be the last video update of the year. And then we welcome the year 2021. And it looks like, as the headline says there for today's discussion, we got a mixed bag of weather for the lower 48 coming into play. We'll discuss that and much more in today's update. But first, a quick trip back in time real quick. This is from the UK Met Office way back on Christmas Day a few days ago. I know it's a little late, but I wanted to show you this. There's a couple things about it. First of all, over in the United Kingdom and vicinity, they name some of these big extratropical storms, the big potent ones. They name them, and this one was called Storm Bella. This was from Christmas Day, and this warning went out that Storm Bella was on the way with heavy rain, severe gales, so forth and so on, moving into parts of the UK and northwest Europe, and it was quite a system. If you search that hashtag Storm Bella on Twitter, you'll find a lot of examples of some of the wind and rain impacts over there, maybe even some snow in parts of the higher elevations. It's just interesting, though, that they do name these things, these extratropical storms. Here's just a quick glance through Twitter and the hashtag there. Huge waves there. Kind of neat to see, right? Across the pond, some interesting weather. And this is some video that was sent in from one of our supporters from Kari over there in the Abingdon area, and this is some low-lying area flooding near the Thames, if I understand correctly. And yes, they do get some pretty powerful storms over there. Storm Bella bringing some impacts to the UK and northwest Europe. Some areas got some snow, like I mentioned, some wind damage, and others low land flooding. And I believe we're going to see in just a moment there was a boat that tipped over. And these storms are a big deal. These extratropical systems come off the Atlantic or the North Sea, and they can have very low pressure with them, but they're broad. There it is. There's that capsized boat. These storm systems are very large and spread out, so they have a huge wind field, and so you get this tremendous buildup of water coming off the North Sea or parts of the Atlantic, depending on the configuration of the storm and the fetch of wind over the water. And you can get a big pileup of water in areas like the Thames and coming off the North Sea, and depending on where you are. You know, Holland, the Dutch, they've created quite a engineering program to combat some of this. So a nice look there from Kari over in the UK. Thanks for sending that in. All right, let's move on to some of the tropical stuff that we look at in the off-season discussion. Every week I like to take a look at what's going on with the water temperature profile. And no major changes right now. Still the negative anomalies in the Pacific, positive anomalies in the Atlantic. I don't see this changing at all over the next couple of months. I would say almost certainly. And another easy way to kind of look at all this is the SOI. This is a good way to gauge what's happening. The daily contributor, 19 for today. The 90-day average is now up to a very healthy 9.6. And the 30-day running average is almost double what we had in November. You know, November's 30 days, and so this 30-day average here, the running 30 days, a very respectable 16.32. What do all of those numbers mean? Well, the easy way to look at it, from what I've understood for years and years of watching this stuff, when everything's positive, like we're seeing here, you can also see that on the graph version as well. It's kind of like, you know, hopefully if you have stocks, everything's going up, right? But when these numbers are going up, that typically promotes a pressure pattern in the Pacific that generates fairly strong easterly trade winds. And those easterly trades blow across the Pacific, the equatorial region, keeping this La Nina situation going. It's like a conveyor belt. And it's not until and unless the Southern Oscillation Index changes and starts to go negative, indicating a pressure change, that the trades slow down, maybe even reverse coming from west to east, that you then begin at that point to change this. Right now everything's from east to west pretty briskly, for the most part, strong easterly trades, And I don't see that changing anytime soon to a pattern that would favor more westerly winds. That's not in the cards at all. I don't see that in any of the guidance over the next week to 10 days and even beyond that. All right, another way to graph all of this, literally, this is from Tropical Tidbits, Levi Cowan's website there. The La Nina, yep, firmly in place at negative 1.046. So the 3.4 index, that's a certain region of the Pacific. There is your neutral line right there. Pretty steady over the last several weeks in the negative territory. The La Nina pattern here to stay. How long it stays and how long this holds, and these are the anomalies in the Atlantic now, in the main development region. That's what that MDR stands for. And we're talking on the plus side here at 0.4. Now, I will say this, and especially if you're new to watching my videos, you look at that and you go, +4 what now exactly? It's, or, well, 0.4? Gosh, it was +4, look out. It is positive 0.4 degrees Celsius. And you might think to yourself, well, that doesn't sound very significant. But when you are talking about energy in the ocean, heat, and the amount of area in the ocean that we are discussing, and in this case, it's from 85 degrees west longitude all the way over to 20 degrees west longitude, so it's a huge expanse of the ocean from 10 north to 20 north. So it's this big rectangle of the Atlantic, and the average water temperature is almost 1/2 degrees Celsius, 0.4 Celsius, above the long-term average. So when you add all that energy up, that is extremely significant. And we start to getting into thermodynamics and physics that I don't know how to explain very well, but just trust me when I tell you that that value there, everything being positive in the Atlantic, on the Atlantic side, that is significant. We're going to have to see how long this persists. We're still, a little bit more than 5 months away from the start of the hurricane season, but these things here are what we look at and can look at in the off season to give us an idea of where we're headed for next year. All right. I also like to look at the actual temperatures. These are not anomalies. These are the actual temperatures in degrees Celsius in the Gulf of Mexico. And the biggest thing I want to point out is the 26 Celsius line, or about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, still poking its way up into the Gulf. And as you can see, if we go back to the anomalies map, how it all kind of comes together, yep, that shows up right there as being above the long-term average. The rest of the Gulf is, pretty much when you kind of work out all the details, right where it should be. Nothing warmer or colder than the long-term average of any alarming degree, literally. But we do have this one warm area that's poked up. And we'll see. I mean, it doesn't really matter for hurricanes because the Gulf's always warm enough for hurricanes, right? I like to see how warm the Gulf is in the off-season, the winter and the spring, because it does impact storms and their ability to bring in moisture from either a warmer or cooler Gulf. It matters. So no big surprises in the Gulf right now, which is good. Off the East Coast, again, these are actual temperatures you would expect. Cold up in the northwest Atlantic, warm along the Gulf Stream. But it's interesting, as cold as these temperatures are, these purples you see in here, and we're talking single digits, both in degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit in some cases. That being said, those water temperatures are still above average. That's just crazy to think of that. And we're talking 4 to 5 degrees Celsius above average. It's hard to believe when we go and look at that. You look off the coast of Nova Scotia here, and there's a purple and a blue, and so that's 5 to 6 degrees Celsius, which is 4 to 5 degrees Celsius warmer than it should be. Even though it's still cold, it's still warmer than it should be. Kind of a weird paradox there, isn't it? All right, let's move on to lower 48 weather. A lot of dynamic things are going to be happening over the next few days. We do have a storm system, upper level energy, and some convective activity even in Southern California. Moving in today might bring some rainfall to parts of the Southwest where I know they need it badly, Las Vegas being one of those locations, and some of the higher elevations along the Sierra, the Spring Mountains there, which separate Vegas from Pahrump over in Nye County, and then the higher mountains in and around Death Valley. You know the areas, Mammoth Mountain, the ski areas. Yep, you're going to wring out some moisture in the form of snow, and then just much needed rainfall, that is for sure. But what's going to happen is this storm system is going to come in, and then we're going to get some Arctic air coming out, modified Arctic air, it's nothing brutal, but we're going to get this clash down in this region right through here, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee. Yep, you guys are going to see some nasty weather shaping up towards New Year's Eve, and I can show you that. Keep your eyes on this system here. It's going to kind of fade away and then reform over here along the Texas coast, and then we're going to have some problems up through this area as cold air, not particularly, and this is important to note, we're not talking about ridiculously cold, record-setting Arctic air, so that's why we're not going to set up for a major widespread snowstorm. It's going to actually be more problematic, in my opinion, because we're going to be talking about a lot more ice, freezing rain, sleet, than I think we would like, because snow we can deal with, but when you coat something with ice, even 1/10 of an inch of ice coating, that becomes a real big problem. So let's watch and see how this evolves over the next couple of days. Storm system moves in through the southwest in the Rockies, and again, some of that energy kind of retranslates into a low pressure area that forms in Texas. You see it right there as we get towards Wednesday night into early Thursday, New Year's Eve. There's that storm system with very heavy precip through eastern Texas, snow and ice on the backside of that storm. Severe weather, a distinct possibility. But notice, 1026 millibar high. This is your, I call it Arctic high, Canadian high, whatever. That's not that strong. I mean, honestly, if we saw like 1045, representing a very large chunk of what we call cross-polar air, then we'd be setting the stage potentially for a major widespread snowstorm. But this is more of your garden variety, slightly warmer air mass. It's modified. It's not, like I said, cross-polar flow as we call it. We're not quite there yet where we get that longitudinal flow literally across the poles. That's why it's called cross-polar. I need a globe. That would be neat. Or what would even be cooler is augmented reality, right? But seriously, you got you learn about this if you ever take Introduction to Weather and Climate as an example. Your air mass source regions are extremely important as to how those air masses end up later on. And the bottom line is this particular source region of this air mass is not coming from the North Pole. It's not coming from Siberia, where it is very cold over there. We're talking, I think I saw like 1070 plus surface highs. That's 1026 there in Wisconsin. And on the other side of the planet, cross-polar, right? You come across the poles to the other side in Siberia, we're talking 1070, 1075 millibars. That's crazy. You talk about low pressure with hurricanes, and then you have these extreme high pressures. None of that in the foreseeable future. But that kind of has its own problems because we're going to have a lot of ice and severe weather with this nevertheless. All right, so this gets us out to Thursday afternoon, and then as we start to celebrate the new year, yeehaw, right? It will. It's going to be a better year next year. Come on. But ringing it in is going to be a little challenging, all right? You see this storm system, nice comma shape there. This is overnight Thursday into Friday, New Year's Day. That storm system moves up through Illinois, Indiana, into the Great Lakes region, and not a lot of cold air draining in behind it this time. That's not there. So all this green in here, GFS depicting mostly rain, slushy, yucky, wintry, mishmash, right? That's why we said mixed bag. That's what we're going to have, and that's day 5. That gets us to January 2nd, 2021. So let's just back it up, see how this evolves. Moisture coming out. This is what I talk about. The Gulf of Mexico, strong high pressure sitting over the Hampton Roads area. And you got the backside return flow on that high, bringing in the moisture off the relatively warm Gulf. And again, this is why this matters. If the Gulf was much colder than average, you wouldn't have as much heat energy and moisture. And you see how everything's connected. But it's a little bit warmer than it should be. So you throw in or advect. Advection means laterally moving on the horizontal plane. Warm air advection, pumping in that moisture, and then it's off to the races with some nasty weather as we start the new year. And then maybe going out a little too far here for my believability purposes, but maybe a little coastal storm action to start the new week, the first full work week of 2021. We'll watch and see. We'll talk about that if we need to, but not too much cold air, though. I don't think we're going to get much. Forget it. Not even going to go there. It's more than a week out. All right, so in the near term, though, a little bit of instability over parts of Oklahoma and Kansas today, so some just widely scattered marginal thunderstorm chances, I guess. And then in Southern California, enough instability there that you might have some convective activity. Kind of interesting to see for the month of December, but it's day 2 going into tomorrow. Look at that. That's like a spring setup. Ah, boy, March and April and May. We're going to be doing a lot out here, especially in May as a team. We'll talk about that later. But this starts to whet my appetite. And again, you got that high sitting out here. This is your classic setup. Big high here. Cold air coming out of Canada. Front coming through this way. The energy, the moisture coming out of the Gulf. And your clash zone is all through here. That's the setup starting tomorrow. And if you look at what the different threats are, tornado, negligible. Wouldn't worry too much about it. Wind is less than 5%, hail as well. Just general rumbles of thunder, no big severe weather outbreaks. However, once we get into day 3, I think the setup is going to be a little bit more conducive, more moisture content, higher what we call PWAT, P-W-A-T, or precipitable water values. In Texas, the western Gulf, very prone to heavy rainfall and storms. So just be aware of that as you get into Wednesday and into Thursday, New Year's Eve, so forth and so on. If you're doing any traveling, this is especially important for you. Airline travel will be hampered by this. Flying out of Dallas, Houston, eventually, what other airports? Maybe Atlanta, later on, and one hub affects another. And then, of course, if you're on the interstates, our truckers doing a great job moving commerce and stuff, packages still waiting to be delivered from Christmas orders. It's been a heck of a year. And the weather absolutely impacts everything we do. And that's why I'm here talking to you today. It's not just hurricanes. Hurricanes might be my forte, as they say, but I do like to talk about other weather. We study it. It affects us. And in many cases, it brings us all together, at least those of us that follow it. And that's a pretty big group of people. It is, if you think about it. The weather affects every human on the planet, so you would think that everybody would be interested in it. All right, before I sign off for the year, just a quick thank you to everyone that followed along, subscribed to the channel, followed us on Facebook, Twitter, became a patron, sent an email, a comment, a response, you name it. Your interaction and you being on that side of whatever device you have watched these videos, maybe the live streams, maybe you watched one of our documentaries. It doesn't matter. Any of it, all of it, it matters, it adds up. And I am thrilled that you have been a part of my 2020. It's been a heck of a year, very challenging for pretty much everybody on a lot of levels. And, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get into the new year. A lot of good things coming. And as they say, the light at the end of the tunnel, and in this case, no, it's not an oncoming train. It will be a brighter day ahead. So there's my Zen moment, my words of positivity for you as you end 2020. But seriously, thanks for following along. I appreciate it more than you know. It's been wonderful knowing that you're on the other end, listening and watching and all of that. All right, so have a great and safe end to your 2020 wherever you are, because I need you back. If you're not back to watch these videos in the future, then there's not much use for me. All right? All right. Happy New Year in advance. I am Mark Sudduth for Hurricane Track. As always, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you again in 2021.